Hi and welcome. I'm Helena and today's date is the 2nd of June 2020, and I'm actually in freezing Bendigo, so I'm in Melbourne, Victoria, Australia, and I'm actually doing a podcast today with a very dear friend of mine. His name is Aaron. He goes by the name of Aaron. Also the creator of Ironcoin and Project Lumen. I don't really feel like I need to introduce myself too much. There's plenty of videos of me explaining who I am. So if you're familiar with my work, it's good to be back. And if you're not, I hope you stick around and see what this channel is all about. Really, it's about interviews, music, creativity, problem solving, whatever is needed for this crazy time we're living in. I personally think this is the best time we're living in. It's very, very challenging, but through challenges, we walk the gauntlet and we forge a strength within ourselves. And the people that aren't on that wave at the moment, I suggest you get on that wave. And I mean, there's a lot of self-reflecting, there's a lot of elevating of consciousness happening at the moment. And I'm just glad I'm at the tip of the wave. I'm very fortunate to have a lot of friends who are also at the tip of the wave, where we all share a lot of information and keep each other lifted and elevated and all that great stuff. So before I bring Aaron in, again, he is the creator of Ironcoin, which is a cryptocurrency, and also the creator of Project Lumen. Maybe Aaron can explain a little bit more about his work after. But I just wanted to a couple of shout outs to some great people. All our mates, Aaron, in Discord, that we've all been hanging out and doing hangouts on YouTube and over the years. And so to all our mates in Discord, also Angela Black, huge shout out to Angela Black. We'll be doing one of the shows one of these days, and I will introduce you to Angela Black. I can't say any more about her. You'll have to hear her for yourself. She's quite a phenomenal woman. Who else? Oh, Mr. Rowe. So I might be returning to Revolution Radio as well. Zach from another radio station, which I might be joining. I want to say a big shout out to Louisa Young, who's my bestie in town. Marie. Just all the great people in my life. Carol, thank you, Carol. I feel like I could go through everybody, but just in case they listen, I just want to pay homage. So without any further ado, I'm going to bring Aaron in, see if Aaron's there. So Aaron, are you there?
I am. Hello.
G'day, Aaron. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm pretty good. I'm freezing. I don't know if this sound of this heat is going to be distracting podcast, but it's really cold here, really cold.
Yeah.
Anyway, so how are you? I just introduced you as the creator of Ironcoin and the creator of Project Lumen. Would you care to tell us a little bit more? I mean, I know plenty about you, but no one else does. I mean, on my channel. So, what say you, Aaron?
Oh, what say me? Well, yes, I'm the creator of Ironcoin, Project Lumen, and a whole lot of other endeavors. I'm a truth seeker, truth speaker, spiritual warrior, and I am actively working towards bringing what I call light technologies onto Earth, into Earth. And that's really what Project Lumen is about. This has been my vision for decades. Lumen means light in Latin, and so it's kind of a double meaning, as in this project of bringing light to the world, but also projecting light into the world. And so it's technologies that are, you could say, metaphysical, technologies that are actually physical, and software, hardware, all kinds of things. So many endeavors in that regard, and one of those is Ironcoin, which is a cryptocurrency blockchain technology that essentially Uh, it's vast. It's much different than Bitcoin or Ethereum or a lot of the mainstream ones that are out there now. It kind of encompasses those and then a lot more, but it mostly is geared around personal privacy and security and ensuring that our own data is truly our own data, rather than, these big companies like Facebook or YouTube being able to just control our own private data and censor at will. Um, and yeah, so a lot of it is geared towards kind of bringing virtues and morality into governance, but using technology to do so. Things that can help prevent corruption, things that could help organization and fairness, and really, I've studied the Constitution for a long time, and to state it simply, I'm working towards digitizing the Constitution, where it's enforced based on cryptography and based on just the technologies we have available today, rather than just relying on the hope that men will be good people and, not be corrupt, because it's not a safe assumption, as we can all see in this day and age. Yeah, so that's maybe a summary.
So, Aaron, I mean, you haven't even hit. You haven't even hit 40 yet, right? So you just said you've been working on this for decades. Like that's a big undertaking. Why did you start this? Like, what inspired you? It's a big undertaking, Aaron.
Mm-hmm.
Why are you doing that?
That's a great question. Well, I've been driven. I've felt very driven. I remember there was a day when I was 14 years old, and I looked into the mirror, and I just had this epiphany. Uh, I would liken it to a download at this time, but I had no idea what a download was at that time, and so it was just this realization that I had a purpose. It was very specific. Um, I didn't know what it was exactly, but it was like I saw it. I could see it. It was fuzzy. And I just kind of followed that ever since. And it led me to many different interesting experiences and lessons and teachers, up to the point where there was a time I spent a lot of time in nature in my youth, and there was a time where I kind of realized that we had all lost our way. Like, all of humanity has lost its way fundamentally, and here I am in nature, living very close to nature, very in harmony with nature. Literally sleeping on the earth, and in a hut that I had created based on from the plants and whatnot available. And it really taught me that this is what life is about: is being in harmony with nature, with the creation that we find ourselves within, right? But society has gotten lost from that, and therefore everyone's sort of just wandering around, not aware of their purpose. Um, and so I really delved into that concept, as well as what is my purpose. Because I was so close to Earth and organic, you could say, I was able to tap into that higher aspect of myself and start receiving more and more clearly visions of what could be done, as ways to sort of mend the situation where people have been have fallen away from their true purpose, from Earth's true purpose, from our true reason.
That's quite responsibility. I heard to know this at such a young age, and to have just be on that path, because you're pretty committed to that path. I'm going to say, for me, I mean, I know what my purpose is, my true purpose, and I live my purpose. And I pretty much only hang around with people who have purpose. So for me, it was the same thing. Like, even as a child, I knew there was something wrong with where I landed. Like, what's wrong with people? Like, why are people fighting? Why do people hate each other? And for me, it turned into music. I started creating music. It was and I thought, wow, what a great idea. I could possibly influence people through words, through spelling and words. So it's amazing how a lot of us, including myself, I don't know about you, but I come from a lot of trauma as well. So the fact that I've reached the level and point that I've got to now is actually quite miraculous. A lot of that shadow work, and because we could be here to want to heal the world as much as we want, but we really need to heal ourselves too first. So yeah, I use music and my voice on radio. If anyone's familiar with my work on the radio from time to time, and it was really important because doing this kind of work really does create ripple effects. It does inspire others. And Aaron, there's just so many of us doing it. I mean, look at the angle you're coming from, the angle I'm coming from. Plus, so many more people I'm going to be having on my shows that are just phenomenally inspirational, just badass people.
Yeah.
So please continue. I also want to know how you're feeling about what's going on in the US at the moment. I mean, we're just getting drops over here in Australia about what's happening. As you know, it's almost like we're getting very conflicting information. Information's all over the place. Like, no one knows what the hell is going on. So,
yeah. Well, and no one here knows what the hell is going on either. That's sort of the reality of it, and that's perhaps even the point of it. Is it's chaos, discord. As long as you watch the news, it's chaos and discord, and the earth is completely on fire right now. Everything. But I'm looking out my window and I don't see any fires, and I see people driving their cars. I see no smoke across the whole entire county of LA County, which it's a big area and I can see quite a bit of it. So, a lot of it is just blown out of proportion. There's a conflict going on that is essentially below the surface. It's an invisible war that has historically been going on for centuries. That is the fight between good and evil. But it plays out on Earth. It plays out through people. And people are either, you could say, possessed by demons or filled with the Holy Spirit. And those are sort of the two ends of the spectrum. However, that's what sort of ultimately causes what we actually do see, which is massive political unrest, I would say. And so we're having all these riots going all across the country in all the major cities. And it's no coincidence that all the cities that these riots are happening most extremely are the same cities that were being very authoritarian, totalitarian about the COVID-19 lockdowns. And I'm in LA County, so essentially, this area has been pretty bad. All of California has been pretty rough, but not because of the virus, but because of the corrupt politicians, essentially. The governors, mayors, various police chiefs and police officers.
You're predominantly Democrat there, aren't you?
Well, historically, yeah. I think that's changing by the minute. But yeah. Well, and it's really the main cities, so if you look at like a map of California, it's mostly red, except for the west coast that meets the ocean. You got LA, San Francisco, and then a few other bigger cities that are more democratic. But all the rest of it is predominantly Republican. Um, and that's kind of true of all of the states. And so New York, same thing. And Florida, same thing. I mean, all, and then and really the Midwest and everything in between in the middle of the country is all red, all Republican. And it's actually probably the great majority of people in the U.S. at this point either publicly or secretly support Donald Trump as president and what he's doing. And then you have a small minority people that also happen to be in positions of power because they weaseled their way to those positions, and they told the lies necessary in order to convince the voters that they were legit. And here we are, and then we have this election coming up in just less than 6 months, and so that's what this is all about. That's what the virus was all about. And so, as we all can see, the virus affected the entire world. Not necessarily the numbers of deaths or even people who got it, but just in the lockdowns, in the economies of every single country were affected by this. And so that was done. Why? Because the main power horse that Trump had was the economy, the booming economy. Never seen a greater economy ever until, boom, the virus strikes, or at least the fears of it were stricken by the mainstream media, getting everyone up in a frenzy, freaking them all out with these ideas. I mean, we were supposed to have 2.5 million people die in the U.S. from coronavirus, according to their initial reports, and the quote experts, were saying that. But here we are, and we've had about 100,000 die, and that's all conflated too, because a lot of those weren't even from coronavirus. They're pneumonia. Like 0 people have died from pneumonia this year, because everyone who died from pneumonia, they called it coronavirus. So it's all a massive, and this is how the war is playing out. And now, because the sort of brainwashing of the virus, and we all should be afraid and be on our homes and wear masks, because who knows, the virus could be anywhere, but it's okay to go to Home Depot or the grocery store.
Yeah, everyone sees through that. Even the most sort of non-thinking, unintellectual people are figuring that out. Like, it's very like I saw a meme the other day, and it's just serious days. Like, so churches, magically you can get the virus at church, but not at Kmart.
Right.
So it's almost like it's so ridiculous how it unfolded, and it's like either the plan didn't go to plan, or people at the bottom of the pyramid surprised the tip of the pyramid, and it was like a test. Let's see how they respond. And quite honestly, I think we've all responded really, really well. Yeah, sure, there's still a lot of people that are in fear mode and just watch mainstream news. There's plenty of those. But there's also plenty of people that used to be like that and have woken up to the rubbish and the lies, and they're undergoing their own awakening at the moment. I mean, that's how heavy, that's how full on this whole thing has been. I think it's been great. I have no complaints. It's too nuanced and too, it's just too many pieces of the puzzle to sit there and really try to untangle this ball of wool. It's like, okay, it looks like this, but it's acting like this and it's appearing like this. And ultimately, what I figured out for me personally, it was just to stay very, very centered and very going within, instead of. But I'm actually taking a very feminine approach to what's happening. And to point this out, it's actually very important. So men at this time, men are being very challenged at this time, especially in the US, because, there's talk about militias starting and a civil war starting. So men are now challenged to really pull out the protector in them. And not to say that women don't have that as well, and women are going to want to go to war as well. but there is a feminine, masculine aspect to what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
That's the stuff that really fascinates me as well. I feel like I'm here to protect to nurture my brothers, so my brothers have the strength to protect at this time, and that's what we're all going to be challenged with. We all need to play this properly. This is our lives here. We all need to play this properly, and we all need to be very balanced and hopefully know who we are for what's coming, because there is more to come.
Yeah.
And what I would hate to have at this time is absolutely zero emotional stability at this time. It would be very difficult to not have emotional stability. It's too crazy. It's very easy to get really emotional about what's happening. So I'm coming from a very sensitive, feminine place. Don't get me wrong. I've got the masculine that will get my baseball bat if needed. If needed.
Right.
But, yeah, now men are challenged to, okay, well, what are you doing? I mean, you guys still have guns over there. You still have gun rights. That might have to be something that's utilised if things get really bad. I mean, let's hope they don't. All right, but yesterday was a pretty crazy day. It sounds like everything's settled down a bit, Aaron.
I believe it is. Trump just declared Antifa domestic terrorists, which means they can essentially go and arrest a lot of these people that committed a lot of these acts based on that, and also the funding sources for a lot of these groups, because they were just basically busing people in from different states, from out of state, that were being paid hundreds of dollars by Soros. Like, we were seeing these flyers that they would drop that were saying, $200 per violent act kind of thing. And, they're all paid by Soros or some subsidiary. And
these flyers exist. Like, are you serious?
Yeah. No, 100%. And there's a few of them. I mean, this is exactly how they did. This is an insurgency, essentially. So we have essentially an aggressive threat, this terrorist threat, that is not just invading us directly, on the coast or from the air, not from one direction, but all sorts of directions from within, which is why they've been trying to keep the borders open so they can bring in their various members of the cells, of the terrorist cells, and they're not necessarily all united, but they are organized enough that they all struck in the last few days, right? We're seeing them all a coordinated attack in all these major cities. And it wasn't the protesters that were doing this. The protesters were generally peaceful, very peaceful, until you started having Antifa members come in and start, destroying things, looting, starting fires, and, violence towards just random people who are protesting peacefully, and then all of a sudden you have people attacking them physically, which is, they want to make people afraid of protesting, because that's us exercising our First Amendment right to free expression, and they want us to be afraid of that, and they want us to sort of willingly give control over it.
And this is classic warfare tactics. I mean, to expect the enemy isn't going to come in with their own strategy and tactics. This is what it is. And what would be great is if people understood warfare and tactics and strategy. I mean, I've read Sun Tzu, The Art of War, and there's a lot of books out there about guerrilla warfare. So what they're coming at is guerrilla warfare, and usually guerrilla warfare is the most unsophisticated form of warfare. Guerrilla warfare is desperate. It's desperation. Because I believe that they lost the war of sophistry, of media, of social engineering. Now they're actually having to resort to guerrilla warfare because the sophistry, too many people are waking up. So now it's just guerrilla. But what Trump's got left and we'll say political leaders, let's say, of the world that are on the side of maybe elevating humanity. Let's just say that that is true. Okay. I don't want to be too naive here, but let's just assume that that's true. They've still got a sophisticated form of war in their hands because they're still trusted. So if you're still trusted, you still got a lot of cards. If you lose trust, all you have is barbaric tactics. It's so clear to see for me how barbaric they're getting now, because that's all they've got.
Yep. And it's actually from the perspective of the Grand War that's been going on, if that's a good sign. That's showing that yes, they're weak. They don't have much left. And they're expending the last of their ammunition of what they do have left. Now, I think they still have more after this, but it's just going to get weaker and weaker every attempt. And actually, once arrests do begin, which I'm pretty confident that they will, and actually they sort of already have, in that people from Antifa have been arrested today, then we're going to just see it'd be impossible for them to continue the battle. They will just have no soldiers left. They will have no resources left.
No resources. They're losing all credibility. The resource they have had is movies, films, media for decades.
Control of your minds, over all the people's minds. That's their main weapon.
Well, I've done lots of shows on social engineering, and that was their main weapon, and that's been ripped away from them. So that's what could make them. That's what could make them, in my opinion, a lot more boldly frightening. I mean, to usurp and co-opt people's minds over decades, that's pretty scary, right? That's one thing. That's one thing that we have to unprogram ourselves from. But to get desperate to the desperation they're getting to now, like cockroaches or rats with the light being shone on them in a corner, they're going to be very unpredictable. It's going to be their style of warfare now, and I suggest anyone just listening to this, if you're interested, and it doesn't have to be political, just go check out Sun Tzu, The Art of War. Go check out political like warfare strategies. It's really interesting just to watch it play out. Different methods of strategy and tactics. I just laugh because I can see how desperate they're getting. It's hilarious.
Yeah, I know it is
funny.
I mean, like, I just got censored today on Facebook for making a post that all it did was it had a part that called, it said the COVID scam. And because of that, Facebook was saying that this meme could cause physical harm to someone.
Yeah, and I've lost some, sometimes it's happened to me, physical harm as if, right? But what I realize, this is just my interpretation, right?
Uh-huh.
I don't say that it's real or it's not real. I'm coming at everything from 0 point. So when I say 0 point, that means I don't know for sure. I don't know for sure. That's where I'm coming from. So I think Facebook are kind of using that 0 point aspect as well, because I've gotten away with posting a lot of stuff. A lot of us have.
Oh, right.
But to go around saying it's not real, I don't think that's, for me personally, is wise either, to say it's not real. To say it's very real and all these people that they've claimed died, that's probably not a responsible thing to say either, because evidence shows that that's not true either. So
the responsible thing to do is to just be open-minded and look at the data and then make a decision or observation based on the data. And the data shows that in the U.S., at least, we've had fewer deaths in the U.S. this year than the last like 3 previous years. We've had, let's say, 100,000 deaths from COVID-19. Okay, sure, we mourn all loss of life, but at the same time, that's less death than we've had this year from influenza, from suicide, from abortion, from, I could go down the list of the things that have caused more death then the supposed COVID-19. And so what does that tell us? That tells us that someone is not being honest about the data. And is it me? Is it the one looking at the data saying, I see these numbers relative to each other, and I can make that assertion that, well, COVID has not been the 2.5 million deaths that were predicted, and far less than that. And so why then did we choose to lock down the entire economy? Now, when the U.S. locks its economy down, that kind of screws the whole world over at the same time. And then we're forced to be locked in our houses, social distance, wear masks. But the data shows that masks cause more illness. The data shows that the lockdowns, the places that did lockdown, had more deaths and more disease.
Well, okay. Well, what this tells me is that our leaders uh, uh, don't really know what they're doing.
Yes.
That's what that, yeah. And that when people can simplify without, again, I'm coming from the feminine, and it's awesome because I see the I see the detail, you see the outline. It's very masculine, very feminine. To me, it's the leaders they don't know what they're doing, and maybe it's time we self-govern a little bit more, and do the responsible thing. But this is a time of understanding how to self-govern, and maybe they've given us the opportunity to do so. This is where I'm coming from, because this time, sorry, go ahead.
Well, yeah, this is what I kind of recognized this actually as soon as Donald Trump got elected. I saw it as a window of opportunity. And whether, he was going to really change things, improve things, I certainly didn't count on that. But I did see it as he's different than the rest of the establishment. And so I'm going to use it as an opportunity at least to implement my solutions that I've been working towards, come out more fully about what I know, about what I've seen, what I've learned and realized, because it is a fact that he is standing up for the First and the Second Amendment of the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, which is the freedom of speech and the right to bear arms. And now, what tyrant would endorse those things?
Yeah, exactly. How can you be a fascist tyrant when you're actually trying to empower your people? I mean,
exactly.
For people not to see that aspect, you must be in some serious, like, self-inflicted ignorance if you can't see that as very, very clear. I mean, I can see it clear. I'm not even an American. It's very obvious.
Right.
But I think this time, see, the COVID thing, everyone's panicking. Everyone's getting a bit, how can I put it? Actually, no. Everyone's getting all sorts of things, and we all had a right to do so because it was pretty crazy. For me personally, I took it as an opportunity to self-govern. Like, okay, no one's telling me to go to work. My daughter's not going to school. The system, the establishment, the institution was not present for a couple of months. I mean, literally, it's gone. Yeah. And it's like, okay, well, what do I do with this? How do I use my thoughts? How do I use my time? Because Big Daddy government's gone for a little while. That's what happened. Everything's closed. Like, the establishment disappeared for 2 months. Now, how can that be a bad thing? This is where I'm coming from. For me, it was not a bad thing. I saw it exactly for what it was. We're all given an opportunity to self-govern. And again, it's all very nuanced, and you can look at it at many, many angles. The only thing that was concerning is the plan to create some sort of draconian reality from what was happening. But I don't believe that that's going to happen. Within those 2 months, there was such an awakening with people that it's phenomenal what I've seen in these 2 months. Such an awakening. So, and I think that we all caused such a butterfly effect that whatever plan they had, a draconian plan, it actually got foiled. It got foiled.
It did, yeah, absolutely, 100%. Because this was the plan they had all along. They had this 16-year plan that we know about now, where it was going to be, Obama in there for 8 years, and then Clinton in there for 8 years, and they were going to essentially usher in this draconian plan of essentially destroying the Constitution and bringing the Communist Chinese Party on over here.
Well, remember, I'm in Australia, so we'll diversify a little bit here, because as much as I'm interested in American politics, it's very much a worldwide thing. It's you guys are it's almost like America's like the heartbeat of the world. If that
Right.
heartbeat stops, the whole world stops and watches. Yeah.
Yeah.
But sorry. So, yeah, the whole world's watching.
And that's exactly it. We have the internet now, and not only that, but it's evolved to the point where people are no longer really getting their news from CNN and the mainstream sources, but instead they've been getting their news and information, more importantly, from online sources, which means a lot of it is just random people, just people like you and I that start a YouTube channel and are able to start compiling the various events that go on and start putting it into some sort of order, and it just might talk about it, their own opinions, but at the same time, we're getting the real data. And if you watch enough different people, you're getting the same data, and you're starting to connect the dots. And that's what everyone's doing. Everyone's doing that more and more. And we are a collective consciousness. And so therefore, as more of us does this, the hive mind responds. And so now everyone knows that Epstein didn't kill himself. That's common knowledge at this point. And that's because of the hive mind. It's because of the availability of information. Maybe 10 years ago, we wouldn't even know who Epstein was, or that he died in prison like he did.
Yeah. Well, let me just let me add something, because I've got a stream of consciousness happening right now, which is okay. So I believe that, as you know, they would have had this plan, a 60-year plan, maybe even longer. All right. So the social engineering was to get us ready. So it was to co-opt the mind, and they took decades to do it, to create certain generations of thinking. They steered our thinking through music and movies and all that. So they thought that when the time was right, we'd be ripe for the picking. And it didn't work, because you cannot kill the human spirit. You cannot kill the human spirit. You can traumatize, you can MK Ultra a child, you can do anything to a human being, and some of them do not survive it. They will not survive it. But the ones that do survive it, they become titans. And that's what they're discovering now through all their experiments, through all their human experiments. They are now realizing we have created titans in people. Your average person, even your suburbanite, people who are,
they're thinking for themselves. They're especially now that they've all been locked in their homes for the last 3 months. What are they doing? They're researching conspiracy theories. They're thinking about conspiracy theories. They're thinking about things that their smart friends told them a few months ago. See, and this just reminds me of the Project Looking Glass. And what's his name? Bill Woods. You know him?
Not only do I know him, I was friends with his wife, Eva, for some time.
Well, there you go. Know him. Know him. Well, awesome. That's awesome. But so he was talking about, I just saw an interview with him. He was talking about Project Looking Glass and how it kind of worked, but also his interaction with it. And so what he was saying was that, and so for those that don't know, I guess, and you probably could explain better, but he was essentially, what was he, Marine? And he was
a SEAL Team 9, but apparently there's no such thing as SEAL Team 9. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, and he was kind of privy to some things, and then he came out publicly and talked about a number of things, such as Project Looking Glass. And so what he was saying about it is that it's this technology that's perhaps a combination of artificial intelligence and intuition, um, to be able to look into the past and the future and then play out different scenarios and see what happens when you do these different scenarios. And so this is getting into like things like game theory and essentially be able to predict what's going to happen if you take this course of action compared to this course of action.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the basic technology, and they've been using this. And you could say there's probably multiple different versions of this, and so probably both teams, good and bad, and everything in between, have been using this technology, which is kind of why we're seeing what we're seeing here. It's like you have chess grandmasters playing a big game of chess, and we are the pieces, and then you have the stage, which is the various leaders that are in front of the cameras, and but it's all about moves and counter moves and ultimately checkmate. But
do you think it'll be at a checkmate, Aaron? Do you think there is an end game?
I
I'm not
think
sure.
it is. I believe it already is a checkmate. It's just we have to go through the final moves before. So that's what you're saying. Remember, you're saying about the cockroaches being disturbed. You don't know what they're going to do. That's because they're in their last moves. They know they're done. They don't have a choice. They're in checkmate, but they still have a few moves left before they actually are in checkmate. So I think that's what we're seeing. But yeah, I do believe there will be a checkmate. I do believe there is an end game, and I believe it is sort of coming.
What about the gorillas in society? So, sure, just say, and I say gorillas because I used the term guerrilla warfare before. So, okay, just say the rats get spotted and, that there's no game that they can play, and all that, and we start to enter a golden age. What about all the scumbags still left in society, all the suburban pedos, criminals,
Right.
yeah, well, what happens to them? Because we can talk about what's going to happen at the top of the pyramid all we like and how those pieces of shit are going down. What about the pieces of shit still floating around in society? That's the one that concerns me, because while everyone's looking at politics, no one's thinking about, all right, well, what do we do at the bottom of this pyramid with all the scumbags?
I don't think that's fully true. I think there's over 170,000 sealed indictments right now in the U.S. Since 2017, which is enormously bigger than ever before in American history. That means that there's, that many at least people that are going to be investigated or arrested and charged with, crimes of all sorts, a lot of human trafficking, a lot of crimes against humanity. But they're sealed because they're bigger names or they're involved with companies that are, higher profile.
Yeah, but that's what I mean, Aaron. We're talking in the macro here. What about on the micro?
I know. But that's a lot though. That's 170,000, and you could probably multiply that in terms of how many people are going to be indicted and all that.
Well,
and then
let's say that there's up to 100 names on each, and what's that? 100 and that's 2 million. I'm talking about.
So there's a lot of people in that.
Yeah, well,
and like I just said, Antifa members are being arrested today, and all this footage of all these incidences. How many people were just like running out of a Walmart, carrying property that obviously wasn't theirs without a mask and just like look straight into the camera? Yeah, those people are identified. They're going to be charged. They're going to be arrested. They're going to be serve justice, and then. That's a lot of, I believe a lot of the things we've been seeing going on were for the purpose of gathering the evidence of crime. Whereas you have certain major characters that they were so clever in their crime that they don't, the evidence isn't there. So they had to catch them in the act. And so that's what we actually are seeing with the lockdowns and how the various governors abuse those lockdowns to the detriment of many lives. That's actually chargeable. That's actually a crime. That's actually, felony. And so a lot of these governors are going to be charged with crimes and even murder. And then again, going back down to the lower levels, justice will be served. There's a lot of justice to be served, and it takes time. But just like with all the Antifa, the intelligence departments have been tracking every single one of these moves, and like all the way back to the source of funding and the people who essentially coordinated the various moves. And they've been doing this for years now, so they have all of that evidence. We just saw there was a Orange County Antifa group on Twitter, or an account on Twitter, that just came out yesterday and said, basically, see us suckers, I was a spy working essentially for military intelligence to get all of your data, to get all of your names and all the, observe all the transactions. They have all that data. Now that Trump has classified them as a terrorist organization, guess what's going to happen? All of those people are going to be brought in, charged, tried, and then penalized. So going back to this Project Looking Glass and what Bill Woods was saying about it then, is he was saying that what all of these experiments, all these different moves and counter moves, and they tried different scenarios, they found that they would always come out to the same conclusion, the same end game. And so they brought him in to sort of work the math and the programming to see if he could figure out basically how to get a different end game, or if it was possible. And he basically deduced that no, there is always this same end game. And he said he was never made privy to what that end game was. And I don't quite understand the specifics of how that works, but then what he did say about the end game was that essentially it's the truth, all the lies, all the deceptions, all the crimes will come to light. They will come to the surface. And so that's basically what we're witnessing here. We're witnessing this long history of criminal behavior, crimes against humanity, that has gone long unpunished. Well, it's all been collected all along the way. It's now coming out.
It's it's essentially a demolition of society as we know it. It's a demolition. And I would suggest that people would I would suggest people really do the inner work at this time, because with the truth that's going to come out, people can't handle the truth. And another thing I realized, I'm even doubting if people can even handle freedom.
Well, that's what we're seeing right now. We're testing ourselves right now. The Constitution of the U.S. has never been tested more than it has been in the last 6 months.
If you had a society, and if I had a society here of people that fundamentally understood what freedom was, right?
Right.
We wouldn't have as much problems as we have, social problems. People don't even understand what freedom is. This is all part of the social engineering. And can people be trusted with freedom? This starts going into natural law. But I think, I'm not sure, but I don't think the world's going to look one way at one time when endgame happens. I think we're going to have the freedom to go the direction we want to go. My neighbor might not want to go that direction, and my neighbor doesn't have to. You know what I'm saying? I think it's going to look different for everybody's going to be living in their own realities. It's not the whole world living this one utopian reality.
Right. I think that's been true.
And that's
I think everyone has been living in their own realities.
Exactly. And it's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. And the more inner work you do, the more you understand about the true nature of reality, my life's pretty good, but I know people that their life's really bad. Well, why is mine really good and yours really bad? We live in the same place. It's because we're creating this, and that's one thing they haven't been able to take away. Your mind, your soul, your very being. That's why life is so beautiful. Sorry.
People will always be free to live their lives in misery if they so choose. No matter what happens, there will be those who will just hate everything and be miserable no matter what happens, right? And they're free to. In a free world, they are free to. And actually, no matter what the supposed politics or governance is in one's area, it doesn't matter. Your mind is still free. Your mind is always free.
Yeah.
And they can't ever take that away from you. Um, and and that's really the expression of the Bill of Rights, especially the freedom of expression, because it is divine. You know, these are divinely given rights. They aren't just like, oh yeah, man decided that we have these rights. No, these are given to us by Prime Creator. Here we are, and we can express them. And now the whole world doesn't necessarily experience those rights, those freedoms currently. However, the truth is that America is not the United States. It's not the North. You know, it's not a continent. It's not a piece of land. It is the spirit behind it, and that was the spirit when it was originally founded in 1776, and that is still the spirit, very much so. And what we're about to witness, I believe, is the expansion of that spirit. Ironically, what yesterday was Pentecost in the Christian religion, and that is basically the Holy Spirit descending upon humanity. You know, the return of the Christ, or that the Holy Spirit, or that spiritual force. And here we are, and I believe that is America. I believe it's one and the same. And if you look in the Sanskrit roots of that word, America, you'll see that it's not just a piece of land. And so therefore, this action, these things that are happening right now are setting the stage for us to essentially implement America throughout the whole world, the spirit of America, that freedom, that liberty guaranteed by God, and no one can take it away from you. And if they do, they're breaking the law. See?
All
And
right. So
now
what
currently,
is? Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
no, you go ahead.
I was going to say, because as a non-American, there's two things I want to say actually. I'm really fascinated by the deep nationalist identification that Americans have with the United States. That fascinates me. The fact that you're so deeply steeped as an American, that nationalist patriotism that you guys experience. We don't have that here. My family's actually Spanish, so I'm Spanish. Uh, Spanish have their own form of nationalism, but Americans, you guys have it all in a whole other level. It's just that's your programming, and it is what it is, right? That was one thing I want to say. Uh, the other thing was
Well, you know, let me just say something to that.
yeah, go.
You know, I agree with you until the programming part. I wouldn't say that that's our programming,
Yes, it
because
is,
it's
Aaron.
actually,
I'll tell
hold
you what.
on, hold on,
Because if you were
hold on,
born
hold
in
on.
my household, you wouldn't be thinking the way you do. But go ahead.
Yeah, but if you were born in the U.S., you wouldn't be thinking the way I'm talking. You would not. You would be thinking the way that all these other countries do that are not nationalistic. You have to work to be nationalistic in this country because you are shunned, because you are looked down upon by like a good majority of people. They don't appreciate nationalism. They don't appreciate it here. It's you might see that appearance because like there are a
It,
lot of us who've been really standing up lately,
yeah,
but
it
in
used to be.
actuality,
It
that's in
used to,
opposition of the
yeah,
programming. The
interesting,
programming
interesting.
is screw America. You know, they just tried to burn the flag numerous times throughout these riots. Do you think that's patriotism?
No, no, no. I
Uh,
see. I understand. Let me echo what you're saying. So Trump,
mhm.
he's almost like the representation of patriotism. To, you know, the whole "Make America Great Again." Again, meaning in the past there was a lot more national identification with Americans than there is now. So he
Mhm.
wants a return of national identification as an American, the American pride, you know, being an American. And yes, there is some pushback from that. There's people that Americans that don't like being. It's interesting. But let me just say this: the world's not going to get, and the United States is not going to get to the point, or the world, where we all feel the same way at the same time. I don't think it's healthy. I don't think we should ever get to the point where we're all thinking the same thing and feeling and living the same way. I don't think it's healthy. I think all this stuff, if people are getting harmed and killed, no, that's not great. But for me personally, the the push, the pull. That's what makes life. That's the cycle of life.
Yeah, and I
I'd
agree
hate
with
to
you.
I hate to live in a world where we all love Trump. The whole world loves Trump,
Well,
and we
absolutely.
all,
No,
you know, I don't you know, again, as long as there's no
this,
pedophiles and people don't murder each other, no one harms anyone. I think we're
yeah.
all entitled to think and be and live the way we want, on the proviso that you harm nobody. I don't want the world thinking all the same. That's the thought of that frightens me.
Well, and so that's fortunate because that's completely what the Constitution affords. The freedom of expression being the first most important amendment is your right to think differently, or you don't have to like Trump. You can say whatever you want as long as it's not an act, a call to violence, and is you can do whatever you want as long as it's not imposing or hurting someone else or their property. And those are the fundamental rights that are protected by the Constitution, and this is what the whole world needs.
Yeah.
Period. And it doesn't have to be, I don't think we should have one president for the whole world. Absolutely not. That sounds ridiculous. I don't think we should have, the strict governance. I think we should. I mean, I'm for small government. I am. I really am. I'm for extremely small government, but enough government. We do need some, and that's to enforce or to hold the lawbreakers accountable.
Yeah,
Hold those who
the
hurt
word
others.
I would rather leadership, like small leadership. So we've got, and you know what would be good if there was a man and a woman who worked together as leaders, like a male and a female.
Well,
That
supposed
would
to be your
get rid of
parents.
like elders, our elders. Let's not say parents,
Yeah.
like people that come,
Oh,
they're
right.
older and they have wisdom, right? They still let the young ones, people like us, and I'm not talking just age here, understanding that that the the human cycle, we go through the anyway, if there was leadership, that it's almost like indigenous leadership,
Yeah.
mixing that
But
with modern times, like a
right.
now I'm starting to talk like this is really out there. I'm starting to realize how out there this sounds, yeah,
Well,
but
it's not out there to me. It's not out there to me. I'll tell you why. Because this is essentially the essence of Project Looming. Going back
just
to my original vision, probably 25 years ago. Um, it was exactly this. It was because I was living in nature, because I was living on the earth. I was communing with plants and animals. I was receiving the more indigenous protocols for how to coexist peacefully and civilly. I studied the Iroquois Confederacy, which was essentially a peace treaty amongst all of North America and I believe South America as well, for hundreds of years amongst all the Native American tribes. And as they started to come into the lands, they respected and honored and were a part of this peace treaty. So there were, more evil factions that came in and screwed everything up, of course, but that doesn't change the fact that this was still a beautiful original vision or thing. It was a real thing that existed and was upheld because the great majority of all humans are good and want good for all other humans. And so they're willing to just say, yes, let's all agree to peace. Let's all agree to, respecting people's person and property. And there you go. That's almost it. We're almost done there. Like we don't
okay,
need
but
any more
okay,
government than
yeah,
that.
but then there's another element of that reality, and this is the element of reality of that reality. You still have millions and millions and millions of people in society, okay, who are like
Yeah.
collateral damage, emotional collateral damage
Right.
from years and years of faulty thinking, of victim thinking.
It's a mess.
Okay, so just in society alone, I mean, mental illness in society is through the roof. Okay, uh, that whole big pharma, psychiatry, all those things that they brought in, they snuck in to co-opt all that stuff. So we're still faced with collateral damage. All right, so to say that these tenants can be brought in and everyone's just going to feel better is not the case. It's a very And I'm not saying
Well,
you're saying that. I'm just saying it's
right.
a very naive way of looking at things. People, everyone, this is what's so brilliant about life, right? Everyone is on their own journey at their own time. What I stopped doing, because I used to do this years ago, because I was an egotistical, ignorant, and other adjectives to describe how I was not there. Um, if people didn't think like me, I just think that they got a problem. And a lot of people still have that. You know, if you don't think like them, something wrong with you, or you need to think like them. And it's I've gotten over that.
Right.
Now I just see the beautiful tapestry of the lot. And the reason why I can is, one, I'm in my strength, I'm in my power, and it doesn't really matter what my neighbor does as long as my neighbor harms nobody.
Right.
So that type of leadership that you talk about, that could work for people who are on that level. That type of leadership wouldn't work for everybody again at this time, because people are still in the lower consciousness. They would not vibrate with that kind of leadership. It just would
Well,
not.
I'd say that's kind of what we have, especially in the U.S. Technically, is we have, the various rights that are protected, and they're ultimately protected and upheld the by the keepers of the peace. And that's so. What are they doing? They're keeping the peace. And so when there's a disturbance in the peace, that's when they're supposed to act. Now we have corruption in all these different areas, and so that's really what my solutions address, is more that corruption and how to create systems that just prevent or don't allow that kind of corruption to exist. And you can only take that so far. You can't necessarily stop, bad cops from being bad through technology like that. However, we can start to clean it up, and then eventually it'll get cleaned up. See, and so that's the thing, is it's got to be a slow, gradual. We have to respect the timing.
And
We have to respect where we're at.
it's a big cleanup too. Like,
It is.
big farmers got a lot to answer for. The education system's got a lot to answer for. History's got a lot to answer for. NASA's got a lot to answer for. So
Yeah.
it's a big cleanup. But what I realized is the cleanup is us. We need to do the
Yep.
cleanup.
We're the
First, we
cleanup
need to clean ourselves, do the deprogramming, fix ourselves, and then we're part of the cleanup. Every single one of us that choose to be part of the cleanup, not just our government. That's what worries me about when people talking about government too much, and just forgetting their role and their power in it all. And again, it's all right. I figured it out for myself. I know what I need to do. That's what's most important, especially as a woman. My purpose in all this. I think and just a little side note about Trump. A bit of a change of subject. What saddens me about Trump, people's perception of what's going on, is they're going to blame Trump for, if martial law comes in, Trump's the first one they're going to blame for it. And which is why they're doing the guerrilla warfare, is to force his hand. It's like to force the man's hand. But
They're
I
trying,
got
but he's
I
not
got
going
a
to.
feeling he's going to come out with something a bit smarter than that, than just full on martial law. I
He
got
already has. He already has. I mean, and I described it. He's declared Antifa a terrorist organization, and then therefore they can take federal action against all the members and funders of that, all across the world, by the way, not just domestically. And then he just today, essentially said that he's going to. Basically, he's enacting the Insurgency Act, which isn't martial law. It's not, and he's very aware of what you just mentioned. 100%. So he's not gonna enact martial law for that reason. And that's why even originally when we first had the shutdown, he didn't just become a tyrant and control and say everyone has to be in their homes from this time to this time and you have to wear masks. He didn't do any of that. He left it up to the localities, the states and the cities to make those decisions, which is how it would work constitutionally according to us being a republic. And so he's making all the decisions right. Like he's moving the chess pieces according to essentially the divine plan here, where we're going like where.
I wonder if Melania, I have a feeling that Melania and Ivanka, like his beautiful feminines in his life, I guaranteed they help him with strategy because his strategies are so, even though he comes across so masculine and uh, I won't say the word, I don't see him as sexist at all. I just see him as like the pure masculine. A lot of his tactics are feminine. They're very feminine tactics.
Yeah.
And he's got such beautiful feminine in his life that I wonder sometimes, I'm like, I bet they help him and they sit with him and they give him ideas because he's got a lot of feminine warfare tactics.
Yeah. And so yeah, because he is much more receptive than people realize, and
Yeah.
that was, I believe, part of his strategy. I think you know, who knows for how long he's been playing this strategy, that oh yeah, he's this rough and tough New Yorker, but really I've watched some documentaries, interviews with people who knew him personally for many years, and they'd be talking about him, and all of them say he's the kindest person, he's the most generous person, he's fair, all these things. And you don't see people who know him personally that are talking shit on him. You just don't. And you see a lot of people that don't know him that talk shit, but that's that's ignorance, that's judgment, you know. And so really, yeah, no, he is definitely a good balance, I would say, of the divine masculine feminine, which is really, that's a big part of what enlightenment is all about here on Earth.
Yeah,
Is
I can definitely see that in Trump, and just the way pictures of him and his wife, they just ooze some sort of, the two of them just ooze this beautiful masculine feminine thing going on.
very
They
much,
got going
yeah.
on. Uh, Again, I'm looking a little bit deeper, but from what I know about warfare, etc., his strategies are very
Yeah.
he comes across very masculine, but the strategies are some of them are rather feminine. Because if they weren't, he'd be ruling with an iron fist, and he doesn't rule
Exactly.
with an iron fist.
Yeah. Absolutely. You know, I mean, we would have already been in war with North Korea, with China, with you know, we would have been 15 wars right now if he were overly masculine, like every single previous president, really.
Yep, yep.
Or actually, most of the previous presidents were just pushovers for the
Or
real
or
puppet
you
masters.
or another aspect is, and how twisted this is. You got Obama and Michael. So
Yeah,
that underlining a
too much masculine.
vibration of, you think it's a wife and it's actually a man. So all this is the morphogenic field shit. You know, this isn't
Yeah.
just 3D. They're playing more. I mean, Project Looking Glass. I mean, this is
Uh-huh.
past the physical. And
It's
from,
very
if you listen carefully to Bill Wood, you realize that these people play in another, I'll say, dimension. You know, they're playing 5D chess.
sure. They understand the mind and how it works, and the sort of esoteric aspects, you know, techniques for
Of
being able
course.
to astral project, remote view, and use that as a military weapon, essentially, to be able to spy, to be able to
Hmm.
predict future outcomes, and you know, therefore make decisions in the current moment accordingly. And so that's what both sides are doing actively. You know, we're not supposed to know about any of that because MK Ultra didn't really happen, and they didn't do any experiments with remote viewing in the government. No. But yeah, they did, and we know about all that now, and a lot of it has been disclosed actually.
Oh,
And so we know,
it's all on public record. There's no one that can
yeah,
say, oh, you're wearing your tinfoil hat. It's like, really?
right,
It's all on the CIA website. It's all public
exactly,
record.
yeah,
The Public Information Act. It's all there if you have the wherewithal and the due
yeah.
diligence to go, look, it's all there. Don't argue with me. There's no need to argue with me. It's there.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
don't come to me with your laziness. I'm not interested. Actually, if you do come to me with your laziness, I know exactly how to play you because you're that stupid, and it puts me in an advantage.
Sure. Yeah. And I mean, you know, then there's other projects that that aren't necessarily publicly disclosed, but we do know, the Project Monarch. which is kind of the extension of MK Ultra, but that has to do with the brainwashing of all these celebs and people in the light or the spotlight, I should say, um, and that goes very, very, very deep. You know, I think there's a lot of people that have been victims. Talk about trauma, talk about abuse, some horrific stuff. But what it does is it fractures the mind of these people, making them susceptible to uh, programming at a very deep level, multiple personalities that they're not even aware of. And so on stage, they're their main personality that they thought they were, but then, you know, they could be triggered in a moment to do whatever action they command them to do. And that's a very real technology because you can understand how to program mind. Now, uh, uh, you can only program weak-willed minds, however, and so that's the importance of us developing our willpower and our strength.
Exactly. Yep.
And this is actually both masculine and feminine because you have to be able to sit in stillness and concentrate, hold your attention on one thing, which is masculine, while sitting in the stillness, receiving whatever you're receiving, that's feminine. And there's that balance, that's the yin yang, and that's the Tao. That's the eternal now. Is here when you're balanced between the masculine, feminine, the left and the right, and you're just in that present moment. Well, that is your will. That is your will to live because you keep on breathing, but also it's your will to do anything from that point forward. It's like the 0 point you're talking about, but it's the 0 point for each one of us here in this moment. But then also collectively we have this 0 point, which is this whole. It's almost like the ocean wave has come out. It was coming up. It was advancing, and now it's withdrawn, giving us a sort of receptive space for which to
Reset.
reset in many ways, like you say, govern ourselves, right? And so we get to grow up and
Yeah.
really understand what it is to have liberty, what it is to express ourselves freely, what it is to protect those rights, and why it is so important to protect those rights. We're seeing that clear as day right now because if let's say Joe Biden were to win this next election, what we're seeing now is basically going to be the status quo, just fascistic control over everything and fear mongering beyond comprehension to get us to, they want to weaken back our will. And it's all about weakening the will. So most of that propaganda, the television programming has been about weakening your willpower, making your mind more sort of lazy, complacent. Because, most people, they don't question things. They go through school and they don't question the textbooks they read. They don't question the teachers and what they say. And because of that, they just accept it blindly. So it's blind faith, just like a religion. Whereas the real thinker, the reasoner, takes in the information, all the information, and reasons with it, performs logical deduction, and deduces what they can from the information that they have, not fixing themselves on this. Oh, now this is the law. This is my belief system, and it is rigid and will not ever change. Nope. We got to be flexible, and this is again, it's an expression of our will to be flexible in our view, in our understanding of the world, because it's always going to change. We're always going to have more room to grow, more room to wake up, and ultimately realize our purpose and then express our purpose. And once we're really in that flow of we truly are on our path, we're expressing our purpose in every single moment of every single day, that is true enlightenment. But even still, we got further to go.
I tell you what,
And
their biggest trick was, I'll keep it really simple. Their biggest trick for decades was to keep the human being in an emotional state. Whether you're emotional about your past, an emotional and a victim state of mind. That was
yeah,
the biggest occulted psychological trick they pulled on us, was to keep us emotional. Like I think of my mother, all right, rest in peace, Mum, Mama. I used to call her
Mm-hmm.
Mama, and I only ever spoke to my mother in Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
But this my mother. I'm the youngest of 9 children. My mother was in a constant victim state of mind. So I grew up seeing my mother, a beautiful one, the most beautiful woman I had ever seen, in a constant emotional state of mind, right? And that was a big opener for me. In fact, seeing my mother like that was probably the reason why I ended up on the journey I ended up on, with other factors as well. But that's probably another big one. Seeing my mum sad all the time and emotionally triggered all the time. And then I realized, geez, this is really powerful. Actually, they use movies to keep us here. They use music to keep us here. Tavistock, look into Tavistock. That'll tell you everything you need to know about the whole music industry. To keep us in an emotional state of mind. Now, when you're in an emotional state of mind and you're in a victim state of mind over what's happened to you, you really can't in any healthy way integrate the feminine and the masculine within you. So that's been my journey. Now I meet other people who get it as well. They know. It's not like I've convinced them, that they know as well. And there's so many of us. There's so many of us that figured out this puzzle. And it's not to say
Yeah.
not to feel emotions or feelings. That's really important. We mustn't take that away, but that we're the captain of that ship.
Exactly.
Not the outside triggers.
Right.
I mean, I've
Well,
lived like that. I could be at a shopping centre, 10, 15 years ago. I could have heard a song, Aaron, and I'd collapse just by the song. I'd collapse. It would bring back a memory, trigger a memory,
right.
and I couldn't function for the rest of the day. Or a
Right.
movie, something in a movie. And I had
Right.
to work that bullshit out within myself. Now I don't blame anybody. I don't blame Tavistock. I don't blame Hollywood. I don't blame. It's like it's fully taking full responsibility as to who and what you are, and just forgive
Exactly.
what's happened, because what's coming for people like us, I don't want to speak for you, but I've got an inkling that we are so much on the right path that to me this is where the party is.
Yeah. No, this is the party for sure. And the party is to be on your path wherever you are. That's the fun of this, and especially these times. It's no accident that whoever's alive and whoever's listening to these words or whoever's in this sort of state of mind is doing so right now in these times, because we're meant to be here. We're meant to be waking up or already awake and leading in these times. And that all comes back to the will, but also, you're exactly right. The emotions, like you have to have a certain mastery of your emotions rather than the emotions mastering you, which is generally how we have been taught and how most people grow up, is that we are more a victim to our emotions. And so we let the emotions control us. We identify as the emotions. So we say, I'm sad, you know, and that's not a true statement. I'm Aaron. I'm not sad. That's so I might experience sadness from time to time, but when I do, I experience it. I let it move through me. I emote it. I don't hold on to it. I don't try to associate it with something specific. I don't, go through some complicated intellectual process to try to like break down this emotion. No, I just purely experience it. I observe it, and I let it move through me, and it will. Emotions emote. That's what they do. And if we can learn then to use our emotion, then that is the greatest tool of manifestation, because we combine our will with the emotion, and there we go. And so now if I say that I am truth, that I am light, and I mean it, and I have that emotional, there's a sweet beauty in this, that I feel it. And I can't necessarily describe it as this emotion or that emotion, but it's there, and I feel it. And so therefore that is a truth statement for me to say that. And it's me utilizing my will and my free expression to not define who I am, but to affirm who I am, or what I am, which is light, which is truth. And that's what we all are in actuality. That's what all things are. All things are light. All things are truth. But we choose generally to to ignore what things really are in favor of what we've decided they are, right? So we say, that person is an angry person. Well, there we go. We put them in a box. And now every time we see that person, we're going to believe that person is an angry person. And that's probably not true all the time. And I can even go, another example would be like a tree. We see a tree, and we instantly in our subconscious mind identify, we sort of say, it's a tree. So we just disregard it because it's just a tree, right? But now look at that tree with the eyes of a child, without identifying it, without saying that it has to be this thing, this name, or this shape. You see it for what it is. You see the truth in that thing, in that energy, in that manifestation of God, essentially. And so that is really the key, because then the truth just floods in. Then our purpose becomes apparent, because it is. Then everything becomes apparent. Then you don't have to seek after knowledge and wisdom. It just is. You have it already. We all have it already. We all know all these things. We all remember our past. We've just chosen to forget. But we're continuing to choose to forget. We're like pushing it away. We're repressing those memories because perhaps we're afraid that it's going to be too emotionally hurtful. And the reality is that it's euphoric. It's beautiful. Our true origin, true story.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
100% agree, Aaron. Just a little contrast, a little story. Well, not really a story, just more of a statement. So, because I come from trauma, I lived many years in an emotional state that I could not control, and I refused to take any medication for it because I knew all I need to do is study and figure out who I am. Okay, it was very tumultuous, but I obviously got there. Because right now, without blowing my own horn, I'm successful, I'm healthy, I've got brilliant relationships in my life, and I'm just moving at light speed, right? So that's where I am now. But for many years, I lived as a very tortured, emotional girl. Okay. Once I started understanding these occulted tenets, and my life changed, and I started living in honor, and I only live in honor now. Okay. The amount of synchronicities and miracles that start happening in your life, because people don't think there's any incentive. Like, what do I need to fix myself for? Like, okay, life's shit, but this is just my life.
Yeah.
Once you do the switch and you virtually change who you are, I won't even get into the synchronicities and miracles that have happened in my life, but they're off the chart. Stuff that you wouldn't even see in a movie. Like, if I was to put it in a book and explain to people the like timeline shifts I've had in my life that have brought absolute crazy miracles that you'd have to experience to believe it. But it's only because I changed. Because the times that I lived as an emotional wreck, nothing special happened to me. Nothing. The only thing that used to happen to me is more bullshit. I was just attracting more bullshit and more bullshit. And I seriously wasn't going to survive that. So my only choice was to really do the shadow work and do the inner work. This is why people go to psychologists and gurus and stuff. It's like, please help me figure out who the hell I am. And anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there. Once you're on the path, I promise you, the most magical shit will just fall at your feet, like
Absolutely.
at your feet.
Yeah, I mean, I'm exactly the same. I have so many synchronicities and just coincidences that could not possibly be accidental or just coincidence. And not only that, but then more and more I have things just fall into my lap as far as, what I asked for, but maybe however long down the road after I ask for it, it does just literally fall in my lap. Or, yeah, I mean, it's amazing. This is co-creating your reality, I would call it. And again, coming back to the mind and the will, and the emotion. In many ways, that's the spectrum of it. That's the tool set, and we can always look at things like relationships as relationships. So, if you're in an abusive relationship, which many of us have found ourselves in, then that's because ultimately we attracted that into our lives so that we could ultimately learn to remove it from our lives and then heal ourselves from that. But unless we can see that bigger picture, we're going to tend to get lost in the victim consciousness of it. And so therefore, and that victimhood is essentially a downward spiral, like you just mentioned, where, if you focus on the shit that happens, then you're more likely to attract more shit. That's because
I used to be a really good shit attractor back in the day. Like I was
me
an
too.
expert. I was an expert at
Me
being
too.
a shit attractor.
Me
You know,
too.
so
Up until recently.
no, I've been the opposite. How they call it prono prono oh shit
Pronoia.
pronoia. That
Yeah,
the
yeah.
universe conspires to
Uh,
make my life
in
better
your
because I've
favor.
started believing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And that's not to say life's perfect at the moment. I still get challenges thrown at me, but it's like, okay, how am I going to deal with this one? And each and every time, it's just I'm learning more about myself and more about myself, stepping more and more into my power. Now I can really be of service. Now I can really have a good time. Because, I was young and beautiful and modeling and all that stuff, and I was a miserable young woman, very unhappy young woman. Um,
Hmm.
and now it's all changed because my mind changed, and I can't recommend enough for people. If you want to know who made me change my whole being, it's Dr. Joe Dispenza. Dr. Joe Dispenza, Bruce Lipton, and Greg Braden. I call them the Holy Trinity. They are three of the most brilliant thinkers of our time. Especially Dr. Joe Dispenza. You listen to him and something will happen to you. If you're in a bad state emotionally, he will lay it out for you, and you will have a download like you've never had before. So just people like that really helped me snap out of my own bullshit. Because really, that's what it was. It was just my own bullshit that was preventing me from living my full potential. Um, as you can tell by the tone of my voice, I'm totally okay with it because I know now where I am, and so many of us have gotten here too. It's just brilliant. Life at the moment, even with everything that's going on, it's just too beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh, listen to me. Oh God, it's just
It
is.
really is, though. I mean, and a lot of people might like react to you even saying that because they're not there, and so then they feel maybe guilty or jealous, whatever it is. But that would be the wrong thing to feel because they're gonna attract jealousy into their lives if they think that. And so this is the key. I mean, and so you're talking about it, and by doing so, you're affirming it for yourself. Sure, you're also announcing it to the world, but that's even greater, right? Like me telling the whole world that I am light and I am truth. It feels great. I just did it again. It feels great. Um, but I'll tell you what works for me. This was kind of my process. I I'd say I kind of came to this myself, but also through various teachers and just sources of wisdom. Um, was initially I had to realize that everything that was happening to me, everything that had happened to me, and was going to happen was my responsibility. I am the creator of my reality, and so therefore, if something happens, it didn't happen to me. I attracted it into my life, and I did so for a reason, and it's usually a higher, bigger reason, and that usually has to do with a lesson. So I would figure out what is the lesson that I'm trying to teach myself here, and then as I figure that out, I take note of that lesson, and then I thank the universe for that lesson and for that hardship, whatever it was. And so I'm doing the opposite of blaming something or someone else, being the victim. I'm doing the opposite. I'm saying I take full responsibility and thank you, me, for giving that to myself so that I could learn this lesson And that it works. That works so well. It works.
And
It's like the full. Oh, go ahead.
I just want to say that way of thinking is such a powerful way of being. Like
Mhm.
you've just reclaimed your power, because half the problem with
Exactly.
most people is they feel powerless. That's why they've got low self-esteem, low confidence, um, all that stuff. And it's that's true personal power. You're not taking away from anyone else. You're not blaming anyone else. You take full responsibility. That's a very powerful place to stand.
Hmm. It's the most powerful. It's truly sovereign. You're not sovereign until you're there,
And you know what else it
because.
shows? Yeah, it's truly sovereign. It's unconditional love, because I'm actually just starting to understand unconditional love. It's unconditional love, and it just each time you're just pushing the reset button, pushing the reset button. The more I do it, again, the more miracles great stuff happens to me. Um, it's these are big secrets we're sharing here.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, you know, I agree. It is unconditional love, and that's actually you want to really make that a part of it as well, where it's because what we'll do is what I do. I'll make a mistake, right? So I make a mistake, and so how do I handle that? Well, I take full responsibility. That was my mistake. I might apologize to whoever necessary, and then uh, I do the same thing. I learn the lesson. I I am grateful. I express my gratitude for that lesson. But I tell Aaron myself, I say, it was okay. Like you did what you could. You didn't know better, or you did know better, but you did what you did, and that's just the way it is. And so you learning that lesson is the reason you needed to do that, to make that mistake, right? Uh, and it's the same thing where we're essentially allowing ourselves to be who we are, and then we're appreciating that, we're observing it, and we're grateful for it. And it's like a feedback loop into infinite super consciousness. Because it really is, because it just carries us up, it lifts our energy, it raises our spirits, and ultimately empowers us to manifest our reality the way we ultimately desire. And then even as our spirit is raised beyond that, we start really bringing that to the whole collective, and we're able to then co-create our world, where we now are creating the world that we want to see, that we already do see. Because this is the thing: is we all have the vision, we all have the knowledge of what is to come. We might not all admit it to ourselves, but we do. We all know it's not far. That's the thing. Like, they've even wanted us to believe that enlightenment is this far off thing. You have to go meditate in a cave for 10 years and whatnot, and fast and do all these things. Nope. All you have to do is just right here in this very moment, just observe the one observing. That's it. And you just do that. And through that, we receive insight, we receive intuition, we receive wisdom, we receive clarity. We might ask questions into that space, and then we make ourselves receptive to receive the answers. But ultimately, it's right there. So you want to have a conversation with God or angels or whatever you want to call it, or even just yourself, if you want to just call it that. Then it's right there. It can be done. You don't need to go to a church. You don't need to study esoterics for 20 years. You just you just sit and listen. You don't even have to be
Yeah,
sitting.
sit down and
It's just
shut up and shut up.
shut up. Yes, exactly. Sit down and shut up and
Shut up,
listen.
shut up, and listen. Oh, yeah. Hey, we've been going for over an hour and a half. Shall we tie this up in a nice little neat package?
Let's make a nice bow. Yeah.
Do you want to make a nice exit? We should do this again. We should probably go live one of these days, Aaron.
Yeah, we should. One of these days soon.
We should get the rest of the crew. Well, let's see if we can talk them into doing it. I mean, we used to
Yeah.
do it years ago. Why can't we do it now? We'll see. We'll see how we
We'll
go.
just do it. I think we can do it. Come on, guys. You know you want
Hey,
to.
Hey, Aaron, do you have any contact details? Is there any way people can contact you for some iron coin if they want to buy some iron
Uh,
coin?
yeah, ironcoin.org, and then I have projectlumen.org, and then earthaaron.com. So those
Awesome.
probably be the easiest ones to find
Awesome.
out more.
What a gamut of conversation what we've covered.
Yeah, all
Beautiful.
across the board.
Nice work. Nice work.
Fun, fun.
I feel comfortable being my reintroduction to, I'll say radio, even though it's just a podcast. I've been gone for 2.5 hours, 2.5 years. Um, so
Uh,
yeah, it feels
welcome back.
really right to be back. Yeah, yeah,
Welcome back, Sister Radio.
because I'm coming from 0 point. I've got nothing bad to say. It's all 0 point for me for now on. And it's good. Like we're reported on a little bit of what's happening in the world too at the moment. So it'll all be chronicle and archived to
Hmm.
date. So I love being able to look back at this stuff in 5 years and like, what were we talking about 5 years ago?
Hmm.
Love it.
Oh, that was just before the thing happened.
What thing?
Exactly.
Yeah, correct. All right. Well, Aaron, thanks so much for joining me, and
For having me.
hopefully we can post this in the next 24 hours or 48 hours or something, and hopefully the audio quality is not too bad either.
Yeah, no, we'll be good, I think.
All right. Well, you've been listening to Remedy Radio. I'm your host, Helena Phoenix, and my wonderful guest, Earth Aaron, and I'm sure we'll do another podcast again. So I'll talk to you later, Aaron.
All right. Thanks for having me.